Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Ham Radio Basics Live, Season 3, Episode 43, Ham Radio News and Updates, December 10th, 2025. Can't believe it's Christmas like 2 weeks away, man. This is just absolute craziness. Cooley's here. Andy is here. James is here. Welcome, guys. Any of you, if you want some swag, email me at hamradiobasics@gmail.com. I know, Cooley, I know you've done that, and I've gotten one other one. But Andy, if you want some, or James, if you want any, go ahead and email me at hamradiobasics@gmail.com. And that goes for you, KR4 BSN. If you want some ham radio swag, email me at hamradiobasics@gmail.com, your name and address. And I'm going to need that kind of like today, no later than tomorrow morning, so I can get these things out, because it's crazy. I went to the post office twice today. One time there was 8 people in front of me. Next time there was 10 people in front of me. It's just like insane. We have three counters open too. I mean, it's just absolute total wall-to-wall insanity right now. Just absolute craziness. Well, for us next week, it's going to be it's going to be real good. You're going to have a pre-recorded show next Wednesday, because next Wednesday on the 17th, we're going to be heading up to Columbus. We're going to be seeing our granddaughters. Oh yeah, and my daughter and son-in-law too, and hopefully my sons. We can catch up with them. It's going to be a lot of fun. Our youngest granddaughter turns 3, so we're going to celebrate her birthday party. I believe that's Saturday. My daughter has something planned, so yeah, we're a little on the excited side. This is gonna be really good. We're looking forward to it. Oh yeah, thank you, my friend. Thank you, appreciate that. Got that. So the rest of you guys, besides Cooley and KR4, email me hamradiobasics@gmail.com, your name and address, and I'll get you some swag in time for the holidays, hopefully. Crossing fingers with the USPS, because you kind of roll the dice with them, but you never know. So okay. Had some real positive response over the past couple of weeks for some of the recommendations that I was doing regarding HTs and everything. And I want to thank, for those of you that are hearing me, hearing this and not in the chat, but thank you so much for that positive response. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are watching us on X, if you want to join the chat, you're welcome to click on the link in the pinned post. That's the YouTube link, so you could be able to. Okay, Andy. Well, I got some more swag besides that, so definitely go ahead and email me. Okay, we'll going to get you guys handled. So make sure that you do that, like latest by tomorrow morning. So that'll work. So all right. Well, I hope you guys are doing real well. Looking forward to the holidays. We are as well. What I thought I'd like to do today was, I saw recently a lot of people were kind of like hemming and hawing. One of the things, and it kind of got me to thinking, one of the things, the cost of ham radio. And as all you guys know, seriously, all you guys know, it's not, if you had money, you don't have money when you get into ham radio. So you become poor very quickly after something like that. So, with something like that, what I wanted to do was, okay, and I was doing some thinking. Okay, so how can you try to alleviate that? Okay, and obviously besides sales and things, but new versus used equipment. So what I thought I'd like to do, and I enlisted the help of ChatGPT. I'm not ashamed to admit that, and put together some lists here. And I'm going to add some of my own flavor to this as well. So I thought this is kind of what, we're all looking to save money, okay? And we're all looking for getting the best bang for the buck, but also getting the best product, in other words, getting the best product that we can out there. But, we want to get something that obviously works. So, this is why I decided to go ahead and do this today, because I think it's kind of important. I think, we need to have some kind of an idea of what we're doing here. Okay. Now, ham radio, new versus used gear. New radios, obviously, they're higher. Used radios, they're lower. The warranty, of course, with the new radio, you have a full manufacturer warranty, and used radios, usually none, unless a person has purchased an extended warranty that's transferable. That's probably it for as far as that's concerned. Condition, new radios, they're new. There's no hidden issues. And with the used radio, it's, it all depends upon how that person who had that treated that radio. I mean, if they took it out and did a lot of POTA and, kind of banged it up a lot, or, they were rough at their home base, it really kind of all depends as far as that's concerned. So, and latest features, well, yeah, on the new radios, yeah, you have that like USB-C, APRS, DMR, firmware updates, and so forth. And on the older ones, you're really kind of pot luck because, before a certain period of time, there was no firmware in the radios, and so you kind of get what you have, what you have right there. Now, reliability, of course, a new is predictable, and with the used, you just don't know. And this is something, and I kind of want to add something of my own flavor here, guys. Yeah, James, that's a real good. That's exactly that's spot on. And that's also too. That's very, very wise. And it takes a lot of discernment. And I know, James, I know you had that, but and this is the one thing with reliability, and this is why something, if you're buying used gear, you probably want to do that locally. And what I mean by locally is, or that you're actually there. Like you go to a ham fest, like you go to Hamcation or Hamvention, and you go to the swap table, and they have an area to try something like that. I know at the Huntsville Ham Fest, I know they have a station set up to test equipment, to give you an opportunity to do that. I would say, when you're getting used equipment, it's something you probably want to get a demo of. You probably want to go to that person's house, try it out, or maybe you're part of a club and they bring their gear in and get it set up and get it working and try it out. I think taking a test drive with used gear is so important to do something like that. My only advice is, if you're buying used gear, do it locally or do it when you go to visit a ham fest that has the opportunity to test equipment like that. It makes a big difference, number one. And number two, if you're gonna buy something used, say like on eBay, have it be something that's really, really hard to find right now. Okay. A radio that's been out of production for maybe 10, 15, 20 years, and they're far and few between. And, the seller has a real good description, and they have good feedback as far as that's concerned. And to engage the seller with something like that, don't be afraid to do that. And I've recently picked up a number of things for my drone channel because of the impending, we don't know, what's going to happen December 23rd. But I bought a lot of extra things for the next few years in case I need them. I did that ahead of time. But what I did was I vetted these sellers, and I also asked them a lot of questions. Even though these items were new, I wanted to fully understand and make sure that I was getting exactly what I wanted. And most sellers on eBay, if they're really good, they'll engage you. They'll do a back and forth with you. Or, conversely, Facebook Marketplace, that's also a place as well too. But again, locally is something you want to do with something like that, not have something mailed, and definitely want to take an opportunity to test run the gear. And then the next button on here, firmware support is always, and then used radios sometimes discontinue. Yeah, it all depends, how far back those radios go. Exactly, James. Exactly. Yeah. That, I can't emphasize that enough. That's spot on. You really got to do that locally. You can't do that over eBay. And the only way I suggest doing that over eBay is something that is very, very rare or hard to find, that you can find, that's unique, or something that has been found. It was real interesting back a few years ago when I lived up in Ohio. I'm really kind of dating myself because that's over 15 years. The church I was affiliated with, they had an old PA system in it, and it had tubes. And I ended up selling the PA system, the amplifier of it, for the tubes, and somebody had wanted the tubes. So I packed it very carefully with bubble wrap, and I described the tubes as best as I could and got some numbers and information off of them. And they paid several $100s for it. And it was mostly, they weren't going to use the amp, they were going to use the tubes, because a lot of those tubes are like hard to find right now. So, and then the last thing on this, accessories all included, guaranteed fit. May need to replace and add parts as far as for used radios is concerned. Yeah, that's kind of what you get with that. You don't know. Okay, you absolutely positively don't know. So when you're taking things into consideration, also take into consideration things too, as far as accessories are concerned. Like, you want to be able to get a microphone that's going to work for something like this. And I'm assuming like a transceiver that you guys would get. You want to get something that's going to fit, that's going to work. The pin connection is right, the cord as well. These kind of things. So maybe things like that they're probably best to purchase those new. And as long as the pins line up with that, you're good to go. So, all right, we're going to move on to the next slide here. And what it is, these are pros and cons of new ham radio gear. And, ChatGPT really kind of helped me out here. And I wanted to get into this. And yeah, you're absolutely, James, absolutely. Filters. I agree 100% with that. 100%. Okay. Of course, full warranty. Yaesu, ICOM, Ken would usually give 1 to 3 year warranties. HRO, DX Engineering, Gigaparts, add extra retailer protection. Yeah, they have extended warranties available through the big three, which is nice. And maybe some of the smaller ones like MTC and others, they may offer them as well. You can definitely call and ask for some of the smaller ones. But getting an extended warranty, I think, is always a good option, especially if you're planning on keeping that gear for a while. I would definitely look at something like that. Okay. And then, of course, the latest hardware and firmware, new HTs and mobiles now include USB-C charging, better waterproofing, IP67 plus, updated firmware and bug fixes, new digital modes, updated DMR or system fusion improvements. Okay. One of the things I also want to caution you about is, don't be too anxious to do a lot of these firmware updates. The old adage comes to mind here. That perfect, James. That's absolutely. The old adage comes to mind: if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of a thing. Because I know some people on I'm not sure if it was the Zygo 6100 or the 6200. I think it was the 6100 did a firmware update, and a couple people bricked it when it really kind of didn't need it. And there are some that you really do need. So do your research before you do a firmware update. That's something I would always go out to. Like, that's why I would say I'm a member of a 705 group and a member of a 7300 group. The rigs that I have, a Yaesu FT-60R group. I go out there and I ask, with this firmware update, hey, is it worth it? Am I going to get any benefits out of something like this? A lot of them are mandatory. A lot of times you don't have a choice, okay, but to do that. The ones that are optional, though, those are the ones that I want to put a little bit of a big question mark with, and go out and ask the community and find out. Go out, search YouTube, go out to Facebook. Facebook groups are absolutely fantastic because people will tell you what's going on with that, okay? Well, like, hey, I don't want to do that on a 7300. You don't need to do that. It's just this, and this. It's not really going to improve your performance at all. It may improve display clarity or something or other, something like that, which you really don't need. If you can see it well enough, do it. These are the kind of things that I'm talking about with something like that. Now, known history, there's no mold on it, there's no abuse, there's no blown finals, and no cigarette smell or corrosion. Obviously, these are brand new items. And of course, we all like the smell of something new. I mean, I think that's something I remember from early on in my childhood to present day, is when you get something new, it smells new, and it works, and it's right out of the box. So, and I want to stop right here. This is another thing that I want to do too. Oh, wow. Okay. That's very, very good, James. You're right. Yeah, Steve is like the Jedi Master on the Zygo 6100, 6200 series, and God bless him for that, because I'll tell you what, I had both, and I had they were frustrating rigs to own. I'll tell you that. I mean, they were good for what they did, but they were very frustrating. I just put it to you that way, as far as that's concerned. but with this right here, as far as the known, the history of it, um, and they talk about the next one is clean accessories, new batteries, full capacity, new antennas, not bent, being if they're HTs, and other gear, cables that come with it, they're brand new, they haven't been crimped, and they're ready to go. Now, new versus used gear, and I want to throw this out there too. I know MTC Radio, they have, and a lot of times HRO, Gigaparts, and DX Engineering will have restocks, and what they call, a lot of times they're either refurbished or they were returns that were open but not used. You can look at options like that as far as saving some money. Now, what I've generally seen with those, as far as that's concerned, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, James, yeah. To is absolutely fantastic. KR, absolutely. I can't say enough. He's done some fantastic videos out there. Um, but looking at these restocks versus getting a particular brand new one, at best you'll save like $200 or $300 on something like that, and you have to weigh the cons and the pros. I mean, a little bit further when you're looking at something like that. For me personally, I would go with a new versus like a restock, just because something could have happened with it, and you don't know. That person that opened it up, they could have poured a can of Coke down it or something. I know, I'm just making that up, but you don't really 100% know. And for $200 or $300 savings, I'd rather pay that and get absolutely 100% brand new, never opened, never used kind of a thing. So, and then the last one here, number 5, easy setup. Everything is in the box and matches the radio. Cables are there, mic is there. You're good to go. You have everything that you need. Just add antenna and have fun, kind of a thing. Now the next one, cons. Price is the big one. Sometimes 2 to 3 times more than a solid used unit. I'm gonna be a little iffy on that. As far as the 2 to 3 times, because you can get 7300s out there, for example. I'm just gonna throw that out there right now, like a EU 7300 versus a new one, and not talking the MK2 because that really technically hasn't come out yet, but the 7300, you may be able to save $300 or $400 on something like that. And this is something, again, in an instance, and I know James is in line with my thinking as well. Is if you let's say you have a friend in the club, I'm selling my 7300. I know they retail for around 1,000 right now. I'm going to go ahead. I really want to clear it out. All I'm asking for is 600. Okay. Well, at that point, you say, okay, I'm interested. And this guy person with the club, and they seem to be pretty reliable. You're friends with them. Ask them, can you either bring it in, or can I come over sometime and we can have some session that I can take a look at it, play around with it, and try it out. Take it for a test drive. And more often than not, they'll be able to do something like that, and that's something that I would encourage doing. Because you can save some money. Again, the whole deal locally, and even with used equipment, it's kind of even better if you know that person. So a lot of times, the big hint clue is with a club. So, and if you haven't joined the club, and if you have one in your area, do so, because these are golden opportunities to buy that kind of equipment, this used equipment here. Now, some newer models are actually less rugged than older legendary radios, and that's true. Plastics have replaced a lot of things right there. Um, the chassis were really solid back in the day, and I'm going to say maybe the 60s, the 70s, that kind of thing. Yeah, James, yeah. Oh, yeah. Um, yeah. That's 100% positive. Sold. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely, James. You're spot on. I should have had you on the show today, James. No, you do need to mentor the buyer. You do want to do something like that. And using my example for 7,300, I'd pick one up for $600 too, especially if I knew the person was reliable and came to the meetings, and I had a chance to know him. I've seen him maybe on like field day and some things like that, and he seemed like knows what he's doing, kind of a thing. These are the ones that treat their radios nice, and you know by meaning treating the radio nice, obviously not dropping in things, but dusting them off, put a dust cover when they're not in use, obviously unplugging the antenna, overnight, or if there's a storm in the area, being smart, having it hooked up properly, using the right, if they're using a battery out in the field, they're using the right battery with that, grounding them properly, all these kind of things, and you can tell, like if you go to a person's house, especially, if they don't smoke, that's kind of a bonus, but, you have to kind of weigh the pros and the cons with something like that. If somebody does smoke, and for me, I can't get anything from a house that has somebody has a smoker in it, because I'm allergic to cigarette smoke, even secondhand cigarette smoke. So, you may pay extra for accessories you don't need: stock antenna, charger, belt clip. That's usually on things like an HT kind of a thing. The other stuff that's out there, that you get is more than likely going to be needed. Okay, for what you're getting. Usually a spare fuse, cable, like with a 7300, to be able to hook up the power. And obviously you would want to do power poles or something like that, which a lot of people are doing these days. And obviously a microphone as well too, a stock microphone. So let's go ahead and move on here. All right. Now from the used gear side of things, number one is huge savings. Typical discounts. This is pretty good. ChatGPT came up with this here. KR, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. Having Elmer let you do that. I mean, that's really saying a lot, and that's really, wow. I'd like to meet him. He's sounds like a great Elmer. Absolutely fantastic. Okay. Huge savings. Typical discounts: HTs 30 to 60% less, mobiles 40 to 70% less, base rigs $400 to $1,000 cheaper. And again, they're just throwing out averages. They went out there and it probably looked at some pricing and some things for used gear and came up with these numbers. But still, you can expect to save over something that is absolutely totally brand new. Number two, older gear is often built better. Radios from 2010 to 2018 were built like tanks: metal chassis, stronger finals, less menu driven, and real knobs. Okay, and they're true. I mean, what it's saying there is 100% true. That metal, it's rock solid. The finals were good. You didn't have a lot of issues where you were having to take the radio in to get it repaired because the finals were blown. They were a lot stronger back in the day. And obviously, they didn't have a lot of them didn't have menus, okay? Like the 7300, 705, 7100, having all these menus and everything. No, there were no menus. It was like you knew what you had to do to get where you wanted to go as far as that's concerned. And then real knobs, because a lot of times they've kind of gone away from a real tactile feel. And a lot of those knobs back in the day, like they're mentioning here, you have a little bit more of a tactile feel for that. And I think it really helps if you're looking to tune a station, especially some of the older ones. You can tune it, very finely with something like that. Proven reliability. If a radio's lasted 10 to 15 years, the finals, PLL, and VCO are probably stable long term. Yeah, I would agree with something like that. If you've gotten good use out of it. Now, one of the things that I want to make sure here that you do is, and I kind of touched on it earlier a little bit. You got to pay attention to a lot of things, and also too, when you go over to look to see how clean the area is. And the reason I say that is, okay, a lot of times dust and debris can get in through the vent system, especially into and I'm talking more like transceivers and rigs kind of a thing here versus HTs or mobile. But and even with mobile too, you kind of got to be careful the environment that they're in, because they can pick up a lot of dust. And a lot of times what I've seen people do, and I've watched several videos on people repairing radios, and they'll take the cover off. And one of the things that they do after they make the repair is go out there with some air dust and go through that and dust some of the components off, and do it very carefully so as to not get it on other parts of the rig. but a dust is a real, it can wreak havoc with the system. And I think, the more you got, that's why I always say you got to pay attention to the environment that you're looking to purchase this rig from, because if there's, for instance, our house, we have a lot of dust, and a lot of it's due to our HVAC system. That's just kind of the way it is. So, I'm real careful with my laptops and some of my electronics that I dust them off a lot, and I'm being real nice to them as far as that's concerned. So, I think that's really good. Now, great for experimenting. Users feel more comfortable. There's modding you can do to things, learning soldering, installing Mars cap mods, trying digital interfaces. Yeah, you can do that. You don't have a warranty to worry about, so you can go in and experiment to your heart's content, but only if you know how to do that, or only if you have someone that knows what they're doing to do something like that. You got to kind of throw that caveat in there. Now, cons: risk of use gear. Obviously, no warranty. If something dies, you eat the repair cost. That's just you're just kind of assuming that. So, and as a side note, Allstate offers, I think they're now Assurion has, I think Allstate bought out Assurion, and they're offering the Assurion type protection. So with used gear, maybe if it's like 2 or 3 years old, look into Assurion and see if you can maybe purchase an extended plan on something like that. Not 100% sure, but you possibly can do something like that. Unknown history, possible issues: overheated while running high duty cycle, dropped HTs frequently are, exposed to moisture, batteries at end of life, mods badly done. I mean, these are kind of, again, you roll the dice when you're looking at used gear. These kind of things can happen. These are the kind of things people have ended up finding out. So you don't know with something like that. Number 3, missing accessories: new battery, charger, clip, programming cable, mic. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't throw that in there. So there's a hidden cost as far as that was concerned. Older firmware, and what the battery is concerned. Okay, like for example, the 705 has some built-in batteries as far as that's concerned. So, and there are a lot of knockoffs on that. I almost always go, and that's something that I always recommend for something like the 705, is I buy OEM. I don't go with aftermarket on something like that. That's something that I always do. So what's that a link for, James? Just throw that. I'm just kind of curious there. Wow. Uh, KR4. You need to introduce us to him. I would travel 1,000 miles to meet somebody like that. That is just, oh, okay. Wow, awesome, James. That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you for throwing that in there. That's something that you definitely want to look at. And I know, when I really see, I'm waiting till I retire, and then that desk behind me is going to be my ham shack back there. So, as far as that's concerned. Um, Older firmware discontinues support. Some radios won't ever get updates again, and that's true. And that's a risk that you take. I know. As far as like the drone community is concerned, there's a lot of older drones. People are still flying them, but there's no firmware updates for that. But a lot of them, for example, they used an app that was proprietary from DJI. Um, a company named Lychee has come up with a great app, and people have been using that for years, and there have been updates to it. So that's kind of food for thought. Digital mode radios lose value quickly. DMR Fusion and D-Star change often. Use digital radios sometimes can't access new repeaters due to limits. So and that's kind of like throwing that out there as far as that's concerned. Um, so yeah, what should you buy based on your usage? If you want maximum reliability, obviously new. If you want the best value, obviously used from a known ham, from QRZ, EHAM, or swap meets. If you operate emergency services, Aries, search, or rescue, buy new. IP ratings are high, battery is new, and the warranty. If you want the highest end gear for cheap, obviously look at something used. base rigs or mobile gears, great deals on 7300, FTM 400, etc. If you use HTs daily, buy new battery, even if the radio is used. I can't emphasize something like that enough. I think that would definitely bode well as far as that's concerned. So, that's it as far as that's concerned. Next week, I'm going to have some rebroadcasts coming up. I have some really good ones that I know you guys have liked through the years. I know I got a couple of great ones. I have one with Josh and one with Jason, and I think we'll get those out there back to back because even though they're a couple years old, they're still very meaningful. They have a lot of great content on them. Those are great guys. They really know their stuff. And I may throw a few surprises out there. I don't know as far as that's concerned, but and again, to all you who've already emailed me, thank you so much. I know Cooley has, and KR4 has, but the rest of you, if you want some swag, and I have some different kind of swag, so don't, we'll get you handled as far as that's concerned. So make sure you drop me an email with your name and address by tomorrow morning, because I'm going to work on getting that out over the weekend to you guys. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. As always, guys, thank you for a great chat. James, KR4, all you guys, Chris, Cooley, everybody. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys. You guys really means a lot to me when you're involved and you're active in the chat. And, something like this, I think, is something that's very meaningful. And I think this is something I'm going to get this out there to get other hams, to get this knowledge to them, because I think it's important, on how you buy your gear. And on a kind of a final note, and I think all you guys would agree with me here, don't go spending, $2,000 on a rig and $50 on an antenna. All right. The old saying, spend more on your antenna than on your rig. And why, I cannot disagree with that at all, because, you can have like a G9, a Zygo G90, and, hook it up to like a $400 or $500 antenna. And you're with that 20 watts, you're bouncing all over the world. So kind of food for thought. All right, guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And I'm not going to see you before Christmas, so I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. The next 2 weeks, I'm going to have pre-recorded shows out there for you guys. So, and again, for those of you that need to get me your address, please do so I can get some stuff out to you. Got some cards as well too. Want to wish you guys, and your family Merry Christmas. Hope you all have a Merry Christmas, safe travels, eat some great food, spend time with loved ones and family. That's the best. There's nothing better than that. So as always, guys, it's a great day to make a QSO. 7 3s, everybody. And again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's.